what do you make of my summary of these allegations, and how troubling do you find them?
Troubling, and I think you're spot on, Megyn, especially when you're talking about Lauren Chen. Lauren Chen was pretty normal for a while, and then she started taking money from Russia, apparently around 2021. And then all of a sudden, she started complaining about the influence of Jews in political life and AIPAC and how they were controlling the agenda, which sounds like projecting to me, right? The whole dual loyalty thing. All of a sudden, she started being one of the more prominent anti-Semites on social media. So I have no sympathy for her, and hopefully she'll be held accountable in all this. And you're right to call her out. As far as the others, I worry about, like with Tim Pool, for example. He was issuing broadsides against Ukraine, saying Ukraine was the biggest enemy of the United States. You're wondering, where did this come from? Well, you have to wonder, was he a useful idiot for Russia? The government said he wasn't a Russian agent. They didn't indict him for anything, but they're sort of accusing him of being useful idiots, where they are promoting Russian propaganda. Now, all of a sudden, I've seen social media where he's backing down from that and saying, well, I've switched on Ukraine. I don't know if that's real or not, but it's really suspicious. And I'm glad the government's doing this and that they were unafraid to do this close to the election. I'm actually a little surprised because Merrick Garland is not known for his courage. He's known for his timidity. And here we are with this. And for those who think this is political, they could have indicted people, perhaps, if they really wanted to get political. They did not. You were correct, Megyn, how you phrased this. So it's an important issue. It is troubling, and we should all be talking about it today, as you are.
But before I get Joel's reaction to that, Dave, it's very odd that Lauren and her husband are not named as, of the targets, to the indicted defendants. So, and there's no way the government doesn't think it has the ability to do that against them. If you read the indictment, they're really among the top villains, and they make very clear that they believe Lauren and her husband, they have them dead rights. They believe, unknowing, this was Russian money and that they were acting as agents of Russia and that they were hiding it from the podcasters. So you tell me, as a DA, what do you think is happening behind the scenes here? Because those are like the only two who haven't issued a statement.
Right. Well, that is telling. That could mean they're cooperating or in discussions to cooperate. I don't know if they've been issued a target letter. The feds keep things
Could they have
close to
been
the
indicted?
vest.
Could they already have been indicted secretly and cut a deal to work with the feds?
They could have cut a deal. I think that a secret indictment is unlikely. I think that they could have cut a deal, yes. The feds are uniquely private about these things. This is something that we're different at the state level. We're public about everything. The feds do work in secret, but you have to wonder, why would they do a secret indictment? They would go ahead and they would indict, or they would be talking to them, issuing them a target letter, and then negotiating with them. Perhaps they have flipped already, because it is very conspicuous by her silence.
So you don't need to indict them, is your point, to get them to cooperate. The DOJ, the FBI shows up and says, you're going to be indicted, and here's all the evidence we have against you. And clearly they've been monitoring their emails and their communications for months now. It's like they know where this is leading, and most people would probably cut a deal because they'd be terrified.
Yeah, exactly. The feds usually get their person because, unlike the state, they've got really draconian penalties, unlimited resources, limited discovery for defendants, and that's why they win about 98% of their cases. And unless your name is Mark Cuban, you're likely going down. So it's probably good to cooperate early on. Okay,
Joel. So what do you make of everything we've just discussed? Because I'll just say this one thing. I know Dave is saying that, like, Tim Pool was shilling on Ukraine. You and I both know that in the conservative sphere in particular, being against our involvement, our support of Ukraine is not that controversial a position. Oh, shoot. We're having trouble with Joel. All right, I'm going to keep it on you then, Dave, while we restore Joel's connection. So it's not that unusual, right? There are a lot of people who are not shills for Russia who think we shouldn't have anything to do with Ukraine. The Republican Party in general is becoming more isolationist under Trump. And you don't have to think much of Russia at all to have that position. And here's as far as the indictment goes. It reads in paragraph 2, while the views expressed in the videos are not uniform, the subject matter and content of the videos are often consistent with the government of Russia's interest in amplifying U.S. domestic divisions in order to weaken U.S. opposition to core government of Russia interests, such as its ongoing war in Ukraine. I mean, that is quite a thin read, Dave. They're not uniform, but the subject matter and content of the videos are often consistent with Russia's interest in amplifying U.S. domestic divisions. I mean, you could say that this show is consistent with a desire to amplify domestic divisions because we talk about controversial things. We're not all about unity and rainbows and unicorns. Like this seems like a thin read.
I hear you. It's just the content of Tim Pool. He didn't just say, I disagree with our policy towards Ukraine. He actually said Ukraine is the greatest threat to the United States. Stuff that is so preposterous. Like, you're like wondering, did Vladimir Putin write that himself? And now I don't know if this is true because I saw on Twitter, I don't like calling it the other name, but on Twitter that he's now changed his position. I don't, because I don't know what to believe anymore if it's a deep fake or not. But if he changed his position overnight because of that, that's also telling. One more thing on that. Remember there was that attack on the concert venue in Moscow in March?
Yes.
It was an ISIS attack. And yet the Russians who were involved with this operation told the folks at Tenet to push the narrative that it was Ukraine behind it. And apparently some of the folks there were eager to do so. So, that's why it's a little more than just saying we disagree with
Let's be specific. Let's be specific. I saw that same allegation. It's probably the worst allegation in here about what they did. But it's not them. It's not first of all, I want to reiterate on Tim Pool, because you're saying, okay, he was shilling. But he's not even alleged to have known that the Russians were here, were paying him. So there would have been no reason for him to change his position to be pro-Russia. He may have just been pro-Russia. He may have just been anti-Ukraine. I think that he was anti-Ukraine, and I think he could have come by that and did come by that totally organically without knowing he was getting Russian money. That's what the indictment says. But here's the thing that you're referring to that does bear some discussion, and that is on page 24 and 25 of the indictment, they write that on or about February 14th, 2024, one of these Russians, she goes by a couple different names, but one of them is Helena Shudra, shared with Tenet. They don't say Tenet, they say U.S. Company One, but we know it's Tenet. A video of a well-known U.S. political commentator visiting a grocery store in Russia. That's obviously Tucker. Helena posted the video on the producer's Discord channel. That's an internal, that's how you communicate in a more protected way internally as producers at Tenet. Later that day, producer one, and we don't know who that is, privately messaged founder two, that's Liam Donovan, Lauren's husband, on Discord. They want me to push this, writes this producer. Again, we don't know who it is, referencing this video of Tucker. But it just feels like overt shilling. Founder two, meaning again, Liam Donovan, replied that founder one, that's Lauren Chen, quote, thinks we should put it out there. Producer one acquiesced, responding, all right, I'll put it out tomorrow. Then the next example. As another example, on or about March 22nd, 2024, Helena, the Russian, shared in the producer Discord channel a video of the March 22, 2024 terrorist attack on a music venue in Moscow, which killed approximately 145 people and injured hundreds more. Producer one privately messaged founder one, meaning Lauren Chen, writing, I don't know if you saw it, but they want me to post some footage from an attack in Moscow today. There's a watermark in the middle of the page that's blurred, which looks bad, and it's also pretty graphic. You can see people getting shot, albeit from far away. That's a very normal producer email to send. It's got a watermark, meaning somebody else owns it, and there's excessive violence. Is that something we're going to put on the air? Founder one, Lauren Chen, did not push back on the content of the clip, but replied in the producer Discord channel, quote, I'm not sure it's a good idea to blur out someone's watermark. Then weighs in the Russian, Helena, assuring the group that, quote, it's fine, no worries. It falls under fair use. Producer one and producer two found a video clip of the attack without the watermark and posted the clip to X. The next day, Helena privately messaged founder one, Lauren Chen, on Discord, asking that, quote, one of our creators record something about the Moscow terror attack. Despite public reporting that the foreign terrorist organization ISIS had claimed responsibility for the attack, Helena requested that Tenet Media blame Ukraine and the U.S., writing, quote, I think we can focus on the Ukraine/U.S. angle. The mainstream media spread fake news that ISIS claimed responsibility for the attack, yet ISIS itself never made such statements. All terrorists are now detained while they were headed to the border with Ukraine, which makes it even more suspicious why they would want to go to Ukraine to hide, end quote. Founder one, meaning Lauren Chen, responded that she would ask commentator three, we don't know who that is, And the next day confirmed that commentator 3 said, quote, he's happy to cover it. That's the entirety of getting one of the hired podcasters or influencers to directly shill. We don't know who commentator 3 is, but it's not Rubin and it's not Tim Pool and it's not the woman who's been mentioned, not Lauren Chen, but the other podcaster. And this person, all this person would have known was that Lauren Chen was asking him to push this message. And there's not even an allegation that he would have known it was a Russian request, just that Lauren Chen, who brought him into this company, thought this was a good angle to pursue. That's as far as it goes. I think we have Joel now. Joel, welcome. Your take on all of this.
Thanks, Megyn. And hi, Dave. I just want to say Dave's one of the most fair-minded people out there. It's great to hear his take. And I remember watching in 2016 when he came out with the decision not to prosecute Corey Lewandowski over the incident with my former colleague, Michelle Fields. And we all expected him to prosecute Lewandowski because he's a Democrat and it's Palm Beach County. And he didn't. He looked at the facts and he called it as he saw it. So he's a real great person to meet here, at least virtually.
Oh,
I think so that I think this is a case where there are different people who are swept up in this. I mean, I think it's funny to call people who received millions of dollars victims. Usually when you talk about victims of fraud, they're the ones who lost millions of dollars. So, maybe I wouldn't mind being a victim who got paid millions of dollars. But anyway, look, I think they are going to suffer a little bit through this controversy. The only two that I know are Tim Pool and Lauren Chen. And Tim Pool, I've been on his show a couple of times. I was there last week. And he's always struck me as a straight shooter. Nobody should assume that because he had sponsorship from this organization or that person that he's taking their view. He has strong views. He has views against our foreign policy in Ukraine and so forth. And I don't think anybody could have bought him either way. Lauren Chen, I don't know very well, but I got to know her sort of through X or Twitter back in October, where she came after me out of the blue when I said some things about Israel that were pro-Israel, admittedly quite strident and emotional after October 7th, but she was pretty hostile. And she was the first influencer or person with any kind of following that I really noticed who was representing what surprised me as a kind of anti-Israel strain of thought on the online right. We've all seen the left explode in the streets and on campus. And there's always been some anti-Semitism on the right and the left, especially online where people can comment anonymously. But Lauren Chen represented this very, very passionate and quite rehearsed strain of thinking that was very anti-Israel. She dialed it back over the months as these mobs emerged on campus. And I think she took exception to that. But it now seems to me that we have to take every manifestation of some of this online anti-Semitism or bigotry or weird commentary of any sort with a grain of salt, because we don't know who's being paid to say what. And if that's where this came from, if this new resurgent anti-Semitism online is coming from people who are paid to do it, I think on the one hand, it should make us feel better because I don't think Americans are innately anti-Semitic. On the other hand, we really have to be concerned about how much this sort of thing is affecting our discourse. And
I think there's no evidence of that. There's no evidence. I've definitely seen her anti-Israel tweets. I mean, she's been as aggressive as anybody, but there's no evidence. There's not even an allegation in here. How is that? That she was doing that to satisfy these Russian handlers of hers, the people because she was also making bank. She wasn't making as much as Tim and Dave, but she was making thousands of dollars. I think they allege she made $750,000 in the not quite 1 year that this Tenet Media was operating. So she was getting paid a lot, but it seemed like it was mostly to be pro-Russian, not anti-Israel. I'm going to defend her, Joel, by saying she came by that one honestly. I think she just genuinely doesn't like the country of Israel or those who support it. But in any event, let me just ask, let me say this. Okay, so I want to get to a little bit of what the guys are saying in their defense. I take your point that they've made a lot of money. And there are many people online saying, are they going to give it back? Are they going to give it back? Well, that's sticky because I'm sure they paid people to help them with Dave was doing this show on viral videos. I'm sure he had somebody he paid. I don't know where that's going to go. But here's what Dave says. He says these allegations clearly show that I and other commentators were the victims of this scheme. I knew absolutely nothing about any of this fraudulent activity, period. People of the Internet, that was the name of his show, was a silly show covering viral videos, which ended 4 months ago. The DOJ has never contacted me regarding this matter. He put this out last night, and I have no intention to comment further. This screenshot directly from the indictment speaks for itself. And there's a explicit admission by the DOJ that these podcasters did not know, that Lauren, they say, knew, and her husband knew, and they kept it a secret and misled these guys into thinking this Edouard guy, this Parisian, was really the money behind it. And again, I can tell you myself, that's what Dave told me. Taylor Hansen, he's another one of the faces. He says these allegations are a complete shock. I want to be as clear as possible. I was never directed to report on any topic. I had complete freedom and control over my reporting at all times. I would never agree to any arrangement where I'm not the sole person in charge of the stories. Matt Christensen, he's another one. At no point has anyone ever directed me what to say or what not to say. I would never agree to anything otherwise. My videos and streams for Tenet are exactly the same as my videos and streams for my personal channels. Every word's from me and me alone. Tim Pool, we have him on camera because he reacted on a show today. Here's what he says in part.
Did you read the indictment? It clearly says that I, as well as the other personalities, were victims. We were deceived by people intentionally to trick us into licensing our content to them. I will add, I have a statement about this, which, we'll launch the full segment, but we never produced anything for them. We had an existing show that was already in production that they licensed distribution for, which meant that the show that we already produced appeared on their network. That was the gist of the deal. So there's no one from their company involved with ours. Their company paid a license fee to broadcast a show that we produce, that we run, that our employees are involved with, and they have nothing to do with. I don't know what, politically, you're going to see a bunch of Democrats making claims and all this other stuff. I can't speak for anybody else involved with the company because I don't know what they do or what their jobs are or anything like that. I can just tell you plainly, culture war existed well before the license agreement. It will exist well after the license agreement, and they licensed it for a set period, and that meant that the show appeared on their channel. That's it.
Did you know there's nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? That's right. There's a massive amount of money that the lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months. If the president is able to push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like during COVID. But there's hope. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group can be an inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting MK to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax-advantaged status. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to potentially tank the dollar further. Protect your financial future now. Text MK to get more info and text my initials to the number 989898. That will bring you your free info kit from Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.